You use this to
Yeah.
actually, you don't hit people, do you?
I sometimes.
Are you going to do that with me?
Oh.
Punish me with that stick.
No, other.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, why you like it?
Yeah. Stop liking it?
No, stop. Okay.
You don't understand. My entire fantasy is a stern woman.
I don't like you.
Listen, please, let's don't jump to that. You are a stern schoolmistress who is unhappy and punishing me, and I'm being hurt with your love stick. This is the greatest thing that ever happened to me.
Oh my God.
What are you talking
You're
about?
weird.
I'm not weird. Well, I'm weird.
Yes, you are weird.
Didn't you look me up on the internet before I came here? I'm famous for being weird. I'm a grade A creep.
Hey everybody, this is Art is Hard with Sage Magee. That was a clip from Conan in Korea, in which he attempts to learn the language, but instead just gives his teacher the creeps. I enjoy that episode so much I decided to make a cubist watercolor painting of it. Let's get started. Gonna go ahead and sketch out on regular copy paper. Oh, that's ugly, gotta erase that. Sketch out on regular copy paper before I get out my watercolor paper. Gonna go ahead and trace what I made on the copy paper, undo what I traced, draw it again. Straighten those lines up. I don't have a ruler, so I just use the edge of paper. I have every other tool but no ruler, because I can't be bothered. Gonna erase his pompadour, get frustrated, start over completely, reference paper, make his pompadour bigger. Is that what it's called? Is it a bouffon? What is that thing called in the front of his hair? Anyway, it wasn't big enough, so I had to make it better. Gonna go ahead and draw her eyebrows and her eyes. I made them different sizes to emphasize just how displeased she is with him. Both eyeballs on the same side, because this is Cubism, and also because Conan O'Brien is creepy. So, if he could, he probably would smush both of his eyeballs to the same side of his face, just to get a little closer. Now that the sketch is done, I'm going to go ahead and go into my pre-mixed colors. I spent a very long time getting those ready. And you will notice that I'm doing what's called a wet on dry technique. And that is a mistake. I should not have done that. And you're going to see why, which is that the paint dries so quickly, especially on cotton paper, which is what I'm using, that you can see the edges of where the color dried, which means that you can see the edge of everywhere is painting before the whole thing is done, which gives a very unpleasant, uneven appearance. Now, if you want something to look uneven, it's a brilliant technique. But really, unless you want it to look, splotchy, you should always wet your paper first. Only a little bit. You don't need a whole lot. You just need... Oh, wow, that's dark. Yeah, that's because I had to paint it over about 3 times. And I just skipped painting Conan because my camera stopped recording. Anyway, wet your paper. Gonna go ahead and wet Conan's pompadour because I learned my lesson. Again, I think it's a pompadour. Comment if you know what it's called. Gonna go ahead and go into my orange color. Make sure that it's fully loaded onto the brush. I want as much color on my brush as I can. Gonna carry that, and I'm just gonna dab little dots all over his hair and let it bleed outward. That is the benefit of wetting the paper first, is that you get that bleeding effect. And it's much more smooth when it all dries. Gonna go ahead and just drag that colored water along that edge. Refill my brush. And look, magically it's all filled in. That's the power of editing. That's the power of editing, baby. I hope that wasn't creepy. That's the Pine Saw lady. Anyway, okay, that's enough of that. I'm repeating the technique. Same thing. Wet the paper. Dab color into that wet area. Fill it in. Magically, it's finished. I'm going to use the exact same color for his eyebrows. Even though Conan O'Brien's eyebrows don't actually match his hair. He could really use improved brows, and I'm doing him a favor. I'm painting him in a very generous way, I like to think. Doing that very carefully, want a very crisp arc on his eyebrows, and that's why I did not wet the paper first, is that I want that harsh line, unlike when I accidentally did it on the instructor's face. What I have in my hands here is called masking fluid, and the purpose of this, there you go, you can see it on the screen. The purpose of this is a liquid that dries into a rubber kind of texture. You place it on paper so that when you paint on top of it, whatever color was on the paper before, or the negative space, is then preserved. So it is as if you didn't paint on that space at all. That's the idea. The problem is that I did not do this correctly. You see, masking fluid does not work very well on cotton paper because it sticks to the paper fibers. If you choose to try using masking fluid, and you should, it's a neat little tool, be sure to do so on test paper. Definitely not on what you expect to be your final product, because you might be horribly disappointed and nearly ruin your painting. Lesson learned, sort of. That's my octopus paper. That was going to be a full painting video, but it went so poorly it didn't even make sense to do for this channel, so that will never see the light of day. Now that I have my color palette for my octopus paper, I just got a plain black. I didn't add any color to it, just thinned that out a little bit so it's not like jet black. Gonna fill in her hair. And even though she does not have gray hair, of course, she's a young lady, I am using this lighter black color because I want to have a shadow and outline for the edges of her hair. In order to do that, the shadow and outline has to be darker, but if I paint all of her hair black, there can't be any shadow. Duh. Gonna go ahead and skip ahead. Skip ahead. Boy, this is boring, Sage. Skip. There we go. Gosh. Now that that layer is dry, I'm going in with the dark black, just very, very little water here. It feels quite thick. That's when you know that you're going to have a very vibrant color, is when the water feels thick. That means there's a lot of pigment in it. Very carefully, I am laying down a line of color. And if you saw my last video, this technique will be very familiar to you. It's something I'm quite fond of. The idea is that you lay down a line of color, try to make sure it's very wet, that there's enough paint there. Go back in with a clean brush and with clean water, lay down a line of water right next to, but not quite touching the color, and then as a third step, draw that color into the line of water. Oh no, it's out of focus. There we go, back in focus. And so I'm slowly pulling the color into the... Oh, look at that. Look at that bleeding effect. Wow. I think that's cool. Give me a comment if you think that's cool. Please don't comment if you don't think it's cool. I try really hard, and mean comments hurt my feelings. No, I'm joking, they don't. Actually they do. Don't leave mean comments. Okay, I'm repeating the technique, continuing this with all the edges of her hair. And once it's done, I take the clean water and just pull it outward until about halfway through the hair, so that there's no stain appearance. And here you can see I am going over the area with the masking fluid with a darker color. I wanted to give Conan highlights. Even though he doesn't have highlights, again, I am painting him in, I think, a flattering and generous light. So to give him highlights, I'm painting over the area that I masked out, so that when I take off the masking fluid, it will show the lighter orange underneath. Or at least that's the idea. We're gonna find out together how well that worked out. And I did not use quite enough color here. It wasn't wet enough, so when I tried to do my favorite technique, I laid down my line of clean water, and it didn't really bleed outward, so it's just a line. No gradient, no effect, just a line. That's it, that's all I did. Gonna go ahead and skip ahead now, because there's nothing to see there. Skip ahead, skipping. There we go, skipping ahead. Don't do what I'm doing. If you need to know if your page is dry, hold it up to the light at an angle so you can see if it's still shiny. By touching it, you might ruin it. What I'm doing right here is very, very gently using the pads of my fingers, well actually my nail at that point, but mostly the pads of my fingers, to pull up that dried masking fluid. Now, what should happen is that it reveals the lighter orange color underneath with a crisp outline. That's not what's happening. The paper underneath is showing because that layer with the color on it got ripped off by this very, very sticky adhesive material. I should have tested this, as I mentioned, on this type of paper before I went to my final product, but I didn't, so I hope that you learn from me and make sure to practice first. I'm gonna drum my fingers in thought there because I don't know what to do. I saw in a video once that if you wet the area where you pulled off the masking fluid, that sometimes it'll make the paper look a little better, it kind of heals it. So I'm gonna try that. And, well, it looks like it didn't do a gosh darn thing. Oh, close up you can see that it's a mess. I tore the paper, it's all zigzaggy. I'm gonna go ahead and move on to Conan's big, beautiful, weird smile. I'm using a very thick mixture here, and by thick I mean that there is a lot of pigment and not very much water. While I was in the process of painting this, it looked so freaky, like he had like black ink coming out of his mouth, that it reminded me of, gosh, what is it? What movie was that? Reminded me the guy had like black stuff coming out of his mouth. There it is, Pee-wee Herman's Big Adventure. Anyway, I'm going to speed that up because it's not terribly interesting. I'm using a liner brush so I can get very, very clean, crisp lines. Filling that in at supersonic speed. I'm going to go ahead and take the color that I used for his skin and lighten it with quite a bit of water. Because Conan O'Brien is a middle-aged white man, that's the color his lips are. They are thin and they are pale. Using the octopus paper, I am testing it out. As you can see, I tested out nearly every other shade of pink and orange. It's octopus paper. Don't ask me why. Did I tell you already? I don't remember, and I can't be bothered to go back and listen. Using this lightened color, I'm going to go ahead and fill in his lips. And while I do that and take a very long time to load the brush, I'd like to thank you for watching to this far in the video. It means a lot to me. I work very hard on these paintings, and these videos, and this voiceover. Well, not so much of the voiceover, but everything else I work very hard. And it means a lot that anybody would watch it. So thank you to my 24 whole subscribers. You guys are really delightful people, and you make me feel good about myself. Okay, moving on to this piece of salmon over here. No, I'm just kidding, it's his hair. I'm going to repeat my signature technique. And for any of you watching at home, I assume that's where you're watching, who have already forgotten, the technique is to lay down color, lay down water, push the clean water into the color. That's it. I enjoyed making this one so much that I actually turned it into some merch. If you were interested, it's on my Redbubble page, and you can see that in the description for this video. You know you want a picture of this on your laptop. Just a big sticker. Let everyone know that you like creepy old dudes. That's not what I meant. That's... Talking is hard. Have you ever tried it? Okay, I'm doing his freckles. Conan has way more freckles than this, but I wasn't about to paint all of them. I made them little diamonds because it's Cubism, and also because that is adorable. This is sped up, by the way. That's how slow I paint. Now, real speeding up, I'm just going to outline every major line here. I'm using a size 05 micron pen. I'm very fond of it. I use it for most of my outlines. And as you can see, it is really bringing the painting together. I mean, it starts to really pop with just something as simple as a thin black outline. Again, I'm using my octopus paper in order to do this because I either don't have or can't find my ruler. Not sure which. Outline all the freckles. I nearly forgot to do her eyes. Glad I didn't. But that's the finished product. You can have it on a sticker or a t-shirt, but either way, thank you for watching to the end.